William Bishop's blood is much more unstable than human blood and shows extensive mutation. But this is not what happened to me. I must keep on searching. The sun is about to rise. I can feel it. I'll continue tomorrow night. I have so much time now. If I'm to stay here until my research is complete, I'd better learn to hide my true nature from the mortals. But what about my thirst for blood?
Come on, I don't have all night.
Yes, Nurse Crane? How can I help you?
I'm so sorry. I know Dr. Swansea wanted you to rest, but we have somewhat of a crisis.
A crisis, you say?
Our supply of antiseptics is nearly depleted. I was hoping there was another box up here, but...
What type of hospital are you running? No antiseptics?
You have been away too long, Doctor. With the war and now this epidemic, supplies have been running scarce for months now.
I may have a solution. In France, during the war, drugs shortage was a daily problem, and we had to use our wits to overcome the shortages.
However do you mean?
If combined correctly, certain household chemical products can be used in a pinch instead. Now, where's the hospital storeroom?
The storeroom? Fat chance. This is the Pembroke, and space is luxury we don't have. Everything used to be stored in the old morgue.
Perhaps I should look there first. Where is this morgue?
It's the large building behind the hospital. You'll need to go in the back door because it's been sealed off for sanitary reasons. Take this key. It opens a small back entrance at the end of a narrow street.
The abandoned morgue behind the hospital. A small door at the end of a narrow street. On my way then. Thank you, nurse.
In the East End.
Good evening, sir.
So it is true. The famous Dr. Reed has joined us. I can't think of any better news during these terrible times.
Do we know each other?
Actually, yes. We met once before, at the Rockefeller University in New York.
Dr. Tippett, yes, I remember. I was assisting Professor Carell in his research about coronary bypasses. He had nothing but praise for you.
He was also very confident about your future. And look at you now. Eminent surgeon and blood transfusion specialist.
What is the Pembroke Hospital situation? And please, speak freely.
This hospital is not exactly the best of London. I'm sure you are used to working in a better environment.
It's not exactly the best situation in London either. I can't have expected this hospital to be prepared for what was to come.
Don't be misled by appearances, Dr. Reed. This hospital does not lack talented people. It just lacks hope.
What can you tell me about the staff in the hospital?
Some are really good, and others are not so good. But during this troubled period, there is no time for slander. I prefer to focus on the positive character traits.
Tell me more about cherished people, then.
Nurse Brannigan is a pearl. She is the most helpful and dedicated nurse I've ever worked with. A clever and cheerful woman.
You really seem to admire her skills.
I'll go even further. If she was a man, she would be a damn fine practitioner.
Any opinion about the management?
I don't always agree with Dr. Swansea's reserve, but I must admit he does all he can to keep this facility running during this crisis.
Ah, yes, the burden of command. I was fed up with this concept while serving as a medical officer.
Don't get me wrong. Swansea's a good administrator. I just wish he would get out of his office now and again.
Goodbye, Dr. Tippett. Scowl voices in the garden. I should investigate. If they were to find somebody. Behavior is similar to the infected William Bishop. Must be the same strain. This sickness moves faster than influenza. This key will surely grant me access to the basement. These skulls feed from corpses and the husks of animals. They're not after blood. It's locked, all right. Mr. Connor's injuries don't match the report. I'd better look into this. Traces of a pinkish foam at the corner of the lips. Some sort of drug overdose, perhaps? The chest was originally opened to perform the operation. The sutures are clean, but the chest has been reopened. A puncture over the left lung, possibly a chest tube insertion. Not the cleanest work, but I think it was successful. Multiple abrasions and scarring on the arms and legs. Old and distinctive injuries of a sailor or a fisherman. Signs of internal bleeding. So, Dr. Tippett's anesthetics were incorrectly dosed, causing the patient's death. And then, he tried to operate on him again. Tippett has made an egregious error. It's time we talked. These skulls can be so ferocious. I'm not sure I can defeat them without becoming stronger. To drink blood is so tempting. It's locked. Good evening, miss. I'm Dr. Reed, the new surgeon at the Pembroke Hospital. And who are you?
Your name has no meaning to me, mortal. You're nothing but dust blown by the winds of eternity.
I beg your pardon?
What are you begging for, mortal? My clemency? Well, tonight maybe I'm inclined to mercy. You'll never forget the night you met Thelma Howcroft.
You keep calling me mortal. Why is that? And if I'm mortal, what are you?
Well, Dr. Reed, if you must know, I'm a vampire.
And why do you believe you're a vampire?
I don't need to believe anything. It is what I am. It is what I feel within this hollow shell of flesh.
Please, describe to me how you feel. What is it like to be a vampire?
I can hear my body crumble from the inside as my flesh cracks and fades. I sense the last pulse of postulant blood within my drying veins. I need new blood.
I see. Have you ever heard of Cotard syndrome, Miss Howcroft?
Never.
It's a mental illness discovered by a French neurologist named Jules Cotard. The affected patients are delusional. They believe that they are putrefying, that they are dead, a ghost or a ghoul, or in your case, a vampire.
Delusional, you say? Oh, sad and petty mortal. You can't even begin to understand the concept of immortality. And you think it is I who am delusional.
I'm assuming you must be a patient here. Am I right, Miss Howcroft?
It's only a cover. To hide from my enemies. I can leave whenever I want. As a woman, a spirit, fog, or bat.
Who are these enemies you mentioned? Can you describe them?
I cannot say for sure. But I sense their eyes on me from nearby. I feel them watching me every time I visit the garden near the morgue.
The staff here are not your enemy. They're here to help you, to care for you.
I'm not speaking of the doctors in white. I'm speaking of the men and women who hunt me. For I am a vampire.
I see. Don't worry. These people will not find you here. I'll personally make sure they leave you alone.
Thank you, mortal. But do not interfere with them, for you are no match for those that hunt me.
I'll leave you, Mistress of the Dark, to your nocturnal activities. Good evening, nurse.
Good evening, Doctor. I don't think we've been introduced yet. My name is Pippa Hawkins.
And I'm Dr. Jonathan Reed. Dr. Swansea has recently offered me a position in this hospital.
Well, it's a euphemism that your help will be appreciated, Doctor.
How would you describe the situation at the Pembroke Hospital?
It's serious. The flu is wreaking havoc amongst the staff and patients. We are running out of everything.
Nurse Hawkins, the Spanish flu won't last forever. Even the Black Plague didn't kill everyone.
I wish I could believe you. But what if this epidemic was worse? What if in the end, nobody was spared?
You must get a hold of yourself, nurse.
Sorry, I'm exhausted. No one has any idea when this epidemic will be over.
How long have you been a nurse?
Well, long enough to see that the epidemic is winning. And no matter how qualified you are, don't tell me you'll change that.
You'd be surprised what dedication can achieve, Nurse Hawkins. In medicine, sometimes we're just a test result away from a miracle.
Sorry, Doctor. I don't want to sound bitter, but I'm just too tired to give a pep talk like Nurse Brannigan.
How is the Pembroke staff coping with the epidemic?
Well, not well. Milton, the ambulance driver, is even more grumpy than usual, especially concerning doctors.
Why is Milton grumpy on a daily basis? Is it just an act?
Milton's not the kind of man who's bothered about a bad reputation, whether he deserved it or not.
Why does Milton dislike doctors?
I don't know. Just ask him. But be warned, Milton is not the chatty type.
Goodbye, Nurse Hawkins. Good evening, sir. I'm Dr. Reed. I believe we're going to be colleagues.
Reed, yes, I've been informed about your arrival. I'm Waverly Ackroyd. Welcome aboard, I suppose.
Does my arrival inconvenience you in some way, Dr. Ackroyd?
Let us just say that I don't particularly share Dr. Swans's enthusiasm for hiring you. What we need here are reliable professionals, not overrated dabblers.
If you have a problem with me, Dr. Ackroyd, please feel free to tell me.
Dr. Swansea has imposed your presence on this hospital without asking anyone's advice. The benefit of his position. But I don't agree with it.
I know we've never met before, but I believe this hospital could use all the help it can get. You will agree with that, I'm sure.
Oh, but I have heard about you, Dr. Reed. Of course, you can't say the same about me, since I have not wasted my time courting the press.
Aren't you too old for such jealousy? It really won't do you any good, you know.
Don't be ridiculous, Dr. Reed. A simple glance is enough for me to know you have nothing for me to envy.
Since your tenure in this hospital is longer than mine, perhaps you can tell me more about this place.
Let's just say I'm tired of the carelessness around me. I have always respected the skills of Dr. Swansea, but over time his enthusiasm has become displaced.
Carelessness? Exactly what are you talking about?
We're here to save lives. The people who trust us are not volunteering for experimentation. They're here to be healed.
I don't intend to run any radical experiments, Doctor. Even if I, as any good practitioner should, express an interest in pushing the boundaries of medical research.
Modern medical methods were created through audacity and ego. But there are rules in our line of work, and they're here to protect our patients.
I don't know what you've heard about me, but I have already proved my value as a practitioner.
I don't question your skills, Dr. Reed, but your motive. Is it money, fame, or are you truly dedicated?
And what exactly is that supposed to mean?
I served in the war just like you. But unlike you, I did not use the wounded to play the modern sorcerer.
Be careful what you insinuate, Dr. Ackroyd.
I only want you to admit you used those men to improve your theories.
Knowledge has always been and will remain our main weapon, and it has always come at a price. And personal initiative.
It is not a question of initiative, it is a question of integrity. These men and women have put their faith in us, Dr. Reed.
It seems you have bad memories of your military service.
I refuse to see this industrial slaughter as scientific progress. War only reveals the worst in men.
We can at least agree on something, Dr. Ackroyd. Thank you for your time. We'll talk later.
I'm so
This hospital seems to be...
Good evening, Doctor. I believe we're going to be working together.
Dr. Reed. Dr. Swansea informed us of your arrival, but I could not dare to believe we'd have such good fortune. Such an honor, sir.
Thank you. And you are?
I am Thoreau Strickland, Dr. Thoreau Strickland. I'm a great admirer of your work, Dr. Reed.
Please, could you tell me something about yourself?
I'm a great admirer of your work concerning blood transfusion, Dr. Reed. I run my own experiments. I'm convinced it's the future.
I based my technique on my mentor's research. He helped me perfect my method. What is yours?
I'd rather not talk about it. For now, it's just theories and first approach. My process is purely experimental and unsuccessful.
As long as you're cautious and methodical, you may remain empty-handed, but you won't fail.
You're not the first one to warn me, but I am convinced knowledge is the main weapon against the ravages of this epidemic.
What made you choose to be a doctor?
I'm not ashamed to admit you and your work have inspired me. I am honored to have the opportunity to work by your side.
It's always a pleasure to share scientific and medical knowledge with someone eager to learn. I'll be glad to help you if I can.
This epidemic may be the century's most terrible disaster, but I'm convinced that we, as doctors, are the only ones able to defeat it.
What can you tell me about the Pembroke?
Well, it has always been an honor to work with Dr. Swansea. But with your arrival, I can't think of a better opportunity to learn about blood transfusion.
You seem quite optimistic. It's a rare and precious attitude in these difficult times.
I'm convinced that this epidemic is a test of endurance and dedication for us men of science.
Questions remain about our capacity to resolve the situation.
True, true. Last summer, during the first wave of the epidemic, I used to joke with Milton about the extra work. We're not smiling now.
Do you need help with anything in particular?
Well, yes, maybe. I'm waiting for a batch of products I ordered for my personal research, yet my supplier seems to have vanished.
Do you want me to play the errand boy for you?
Oh no, Dr. Reed. But if you went personally to his shop, what with your reputation and all, he wouldn't dare to refuse the products I need.
I see. Well, give me the address, for I may pass by if I have time. What do you think of Dr. Ackroyd's aversion to modern medical methods?
It's a shame he's so narrow-minded. Dr. Swansea taught me that science is about exploring uncharted territory. I'm convinced that's true.
With the influenza and all that's going on, you should put your differences aside, don't you think? Why is it so difficult to work together?
I believe that if Dr. Ackroyd had been the one to discover the transfusion process, he would be the first to recommend its use.
So you believe it's just a question of jealousy and pride?
Dr. Ackroyd is as proud as he is blinded by his obsolete concept of medical science.
Tell me more about your willingness to experiment with new medical techniques.
Harvey Fiddick is a patient suffering from a severe injury that could cripple him if not treated correctly. I'm convinced your blood transfusion technique could help him.
What is it you really want? To save him, or to prove your point?
Fair question. I want nothing but to save my patient, Dr. Reed. Especially since I know Mr. Fiddick's story.
Tell me Mr. Fiddick's story.
Our first diagnosis was compromised because Mr. Fiddick lied to us about the real origin of his injury. He first claimed it was an accident.
But why would he hide such crucial information from us?
Because he is a proud father, ashamed of putting his children at risk because of his own negligence.
This personal involvement could also appear to be a lack of impartiality. You must know that a good surgeon must remain neutral.
I agree. But that does not excuse Dr. Ackroyd's behavior, a man who did not even take time to converse with his patient.
Do you think keeping his distance was a mistake?
All I know is that I'm taking care of human beings with desires, hopes, and fears. Not some biological machine comprised of blood, bones, and flesh.
Goodbye, Dr. Strickland.
You always knew the words to calm the children. As for me, what a blundering idiot.
Finally, you've returned, Doctor. Did you find anything of value?
Yes, nurse.
You've worked your first miracle, Doctor. Now, this patient here needs immediate treatment.
Duty calls. When the storm has passed, I'll show you how to mix the remedy yourself with the same basic ingredients.
Many thanks, Doctor. When you've finished, you ought to report to Dr. Swansea in his office. He's been looking for you. Seemed pressing.
Words to calm the children, Ellen. As for me, what a blundering idiot.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Reed. Can I help at all?
No,
Really? Why are you here, then?
I don't want to talk. My throat hurts too much.
I suppose that this pain is the reason you're here. Is someone taking care of you?
Yes. And no.
Could you at least tell me your name, sir?
Mortimer. Mortimer Goswick.
How painful is your throat, Mr. Goswick?
So painful I'd rather not talk at all, Doctor.
I'm sure you realize a doctor and his patient have to communicate, sir. Would it help if I gave you some paper and a pen?
Not really.
I see. Then maybe it's not just your throat that hurts, Mr. Goswick. Perhaps your sore throat is just the consequence of something more hurtful.
Yes, maybe. But I don't want to talk or even write about it now.
How painful is your throat, Mr. Goswick?
So painful I'd rather not talk at all, Doctor.
I'll let you get some rest, then.
I'm all right. Don't waste your time with me.
Good evening, madam. Can I help you?
It's my son who needs you, sir.
I'm Dr. Jonathan Reed. How can I help your son?
I'm Beatrice Goswick, mother of Mortimer Goswick. Could you check on him, please, Dr. Reed? I've heard much of your talents as a physician.
What can you tell me about yourself, Mrs. Goswick?
Not much to say. Just take care of my Mortimer and I'll cover all the expenses. That's all that matters.
May I ask if you have an occupation, Mrs. Goswick?
I'm a teacher by profession. I teach young women who are more ambitious about their futures than their families.
Are you really that rich? Most of the patients here are of a more humble origin, if I may say so.
Yes, thanks to my husband. May he rest in peace. I can cover any needed medical expenses.
What do you think of your reception here? Any complaints?
I have had the uttermost reservations about this hospital since we arrived. But we had no other choice, considering the state of emergency.
Is there something in particular that's bothering you?
Some of the staff were not especially welcoming. I suspect they're not accustomed to dealing with patients of such social standing.
Tell me more about your arrival at the Pembroke Hospital. What gave you such a bad first impression?
The ambulance driver was quite rude, for a start. And that nurse, Miss Hawkins, seems to have quite a dubious attitude.
What do you mean?
She managed to secure a bed for my son despite the epidemic. It was a relief, but it wasn't cheap.
She charged you for a bed?
Yes, and I paid without question, considering the urgency of the situation.
I share your concern, Mrs. Goswick. Be sure that I'll talk to the people involved.
I don't expect compensation, Dr. Reed. But I'm aware such behavior would not be tolerated in other hospitals.
Goodbye, Mrs. Goswick.
I will not let you down, my boy.
Good evening, Mr. Goswick. How are you?
I'm okay.
Tell me about yourself, Mr. Goswick.
I don't want to talk, Doctor.
How painful is your throat, Mr. Goswick?
So painful I'd rather not talk at all, Doctor.
Why did your mother have you hospitalized here? She seems convinced this is a bad hospital.
My mother just wants the best for me. She won't rest while I'm here. She'd go all the way to hell and back to help me.
Is your mother bothering you? As your doctor, I can ask her to leave you alone if you would prefer.
That's tempting, Doctor. But you have no idea what my mother is capable of. She would tie herself to my bed if you asked her to leave.
Pembroke Hospital may look unorthodox, but rest assured you're in good hands here.
It's not me you have to convince, Dr. Reed. It's my mother.
But in the circumstances, I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt.
I have to go now, sir. But don't hesitate to contact me if you need any help.
Good evening, sir. Doctor.
This hospital seems to be falling apart. But in the circumstances, I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt.
I'm all right. Waste your time with me.
Good evening, sir. I'm Dr. Reed. May I help you?
I don't know if a third opinion is needed. Your colleagues are already arguing about my condition.
I see. Would you mind telling me more about your situation?
I'm Harvey Fiddick. All I want is to get me bloody arm fixed properly.
Tell me about yourself, Mr. Fiddick.
I'm just a regular guy waiting to get his arm fixed, so I can return to work and to my family.
I was more curious about what you were doing before being hospitalized.
I'm a carpenter, and a good one too. But that means I need both arms to feed my family, Dr. Reed.
Are you satisfied with your treatment here?
Well, it's clear that I've chosen a bad time to be injured. Forgive my bluntness, but you seem overwhelmed by cases of the flu.
I won't lie to you about it. I'm afraid we are.
Are you sure you don't want to operate yourself, Dr. Reed? I have the feeling you're very capable. And your colleagues seem to think so too.
In other circumstances, you would be right. But for now, I don't think I can take on the responsibility. My apologies. Tell me about the doctors who are arguing about your case.
Strickland and Aykroyd. They both want the best for me, but there's a lot of pride there. Doctors are no different from carpenters, it seems.
What do you mean?
I often had professional arguments with rivals on a building site. Difference is, I disagreed about wooden nails, not flesh and bones.
Tell me about your injury, Harvey. Why do you feel so guilty about it?
My wife died because of me. And now I may lose everything because I've been careless enough to hurt myself. What an arsehole.
You can't hold yourself responsible for your injury, Mr. Fiddick. Unless you tried to hurt yourself.
Of course I didn't hurt myself. But I can't work until my arm is fixed. My children need to eat, Doctor.
How could your job be responsible for your wife's death?
I was working a double. She went out to bring me a hot meal and got caught in a German bomb raid.
Tell me more about the death of your wife, Harvey.
1915. I was in the army, building workshops for the Royal Flying Corps. Helen was happy I wasn't sent to the front.
What happened?
The Germans sent Zeppelins to bomb the construction site, but they missed their target. My wife was bringing my dinner when the bombs fell.
How are your children after losing their mother?
They were smaller then. The only good thing about this is my Helen didn't bring them with her that night.
I'm sorry for your loss. So many died during the bombings. I served in France and witnessed the carnage there.
I would like to say that she didn't suffer. Truth is, I have no idea. I just know that I'm all that me kids have. Poor little bleeders.
Goodbye for now, Mr. Fiddick. I'll see you later.
My sweet girl. Reads me like a book. I never could keep anything from her.
When you're feeling better.
Thelma Howcroft said she was being watched by vampire hunters. Where are they hiding? I should investigate. Good evening. I'm Dr. Reed.
Always a pleasure to meet a colleague, sir. Especially when he was supposedly dead.
A colleague? Are you a doctor too?
Not anymore, sir. I used to be Dr. Rakesh Chadana. Now, I'm just Mr. Chadana. Pawnbroker and humble guardian of this morgue.
What do you mean, you used to be a doctor? Was your license revoked?
No, sir. It is just that I like to be precise. I run a little pawn shop while taking care of the dead. But I used to be a real doctor.
Are you afraid or uneasy being surrounded by so many corpses?
Why should I? These bodies are empty vessels. Flesh left to decay. Poof. No soul anymore. All gone.
How did you get this job?
After I left the army, I worked as an undertaker down by the docks. A dangerous place with many an unpleasant business there. Milton Hooks helped me get a job here.
An interesting point of view. And quite an exotic one, too. Most people fear, or at least have a respect, for dead flesh.
Sir, as a medic during the war, I learned to face my death and the death of others. It's the pain we have to tame, not death itself.
Do you work here alone?
Yes, very easy work, sir. All I have to do is watch a few bodies. The situation was very different when the main morgue was still open.
Why close the hospital's main morgue?
It was for sanitary reasons after the beginning of the epidemic. Cadavers had to be moved to the nearest mass grave.
Why do you have to watch these bodies?
Because these poor fellows have no names. We keep them in case someone comes looking for the missing. Sadly, very rarely happens.
Have we met before?
I don't think so, sir. Why?
When we first talked, you said you were glad to meet me since I was reported dead.
Funny story, sir. Your sister came here a few nights ago. You were missing, and she was looking for your body. She must be very relieved now.
A pawnbroker? I expect you get all types of people here.
Yes, sir. All kind of people. For I sell all kind of goods.
What kind of goods?
With the quarantine, it's not always easy to buy things. So I trade. I exchange. Some people sell, some others buy. I like to help.
Who comes here to trade with you? It's very unhygienic, even unsafe. Diseases can spread. For the customers, for the hospital.
I'm very cautious, sir. I've been a doctor, remember? And all my clients are good people. In fact, I think I only know good people.
Since you're not afraid of dying, do you believe in life after death, Rakesh?
No. I believe we must do all the good we can while alive. For our time is short, and the obstacles are endless.
Do you think you would enjoy immortality as a concept?
I don't think so. Don't mistake me. I love life, and I'd like to live a long life. But everything has to decay, sir. Even goodwill.
Do you really believe goodwill cannot last?
As I said, sir, everything decays. If I was to never die, goodness, I would be bored or worse. And I like to be helpful, sir.
Quite depressing, wouldn't you say?
Yes, but the good news is, we'll all die before losing our humanity, sir.
So you're ready to die?
No, I am not. I don't fear death, for I won't see it. What troubles me is the pain my death will inflict to those I know.
You're a wise man, Mr. Chidana.
No, Dr. Reed. I am a foolish man. But I like to think otherwise.
Please show me what you have to sell.
Of course. It's just trinkets and curios, really. But I'm sure they can be useful. I'm sorry you ended up playing in court. I understand.
Please, Jonathan, come in. Fascinating, is it not? In the last decade, so many mysteries have been brought to light with our microscopes. The human body, biology's penultimate frontier. The more we explore its boundaries, the less we're able to trace a clear line between life and death. You, my friend, have a foot in both countries. The view must be vertiginous.
It's at least as vertiginous as chatting about vampires with you, I would say.
This must be all so new to you. This area of town, the hospital, a brand new life. How stimulating it must be.
I wish I could share your enthusiasm, Dr. Swansea, but my condition defies scientific categorization. Undead? Unalive? Immortality defies logic.
I cannot express my thrill at this serendipitous turn of events. The world's most eminent specialist in blood transfusions, a vampire. One might say a gift from heaven.
There is an absurd poetry to my situation. Physician, heal thyself.
Forgive me. I've been an admirer of your work for a long time, and now you are so much more than a brilliant physician. And please, call me Edgar.
There is no need to apologize, Edgar. You offered me sanctuary when I had none.
Very well. I have a task for you, Jonathan. Something that will require all your newfound skills.
Please, go on.
The Pembroke only survives through the generosity of our benefactors. Unfortunately, our main donor has found herself in a bit of a bind. Now, if you could help her out...
A spokesman or politician is what you need. That's not my calling. And until I come to understand what has happened to me, I require discretion.
Discretion is in order, Jonathan. Lady Ashbury has recently received rather indelicate correspondence that, if revealed, would jeopardize her position.
And you would like me to eradicate this threat?
By the stole, of course not. I would just like you to pay her a visit. Her ladyship is certainly near the tents outside, tending the sick. You can't miss her. Look for someone impossibly delicate.
Accepted. I'll see what kind of trouble Lady Ashbury is in.